Okay, everyone, we'll settle for today's preaching, and you may show your agreement with 3 rounds of sadhu. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Evaṃ passaṃ peyyālaṃ nāparaṃ ittattāyāti pajānāti. Dear Venerable, dear Dhamma friends, when we think about the nature of self, yesterday we have discussed about observing it. We don't right away try to tell that there is no self. Instead, what we do is we do this observation. In a way, we are suspicious about this, and we try to continue our observation, and we try to figure out what truly means as self. That's the very idea, that's the very exercise that we are doing as the mindful practice. Now, initially it's more like you are starting with self. You assume that there is a self, and gradually you try to continue your observation. It's like null hypothesis in mathematics or science. You take this hypothesis, you assume that the self is there, and you continue your work, you continue your observation, and at the end of it, you realize your initial hypothesis, your initial assumption was wrong. That type of experiment we do as noble experiment. And as Buddha mentioned in this particular sutta, that this is no more than clinging to these 5 aggregates. All the views like self, a soul that travels from life to life, such views arise because of clinging to 5 aggregates. That's the very idea Buddha is trying to communicate. Now, yesterday we explained a certain part. He was saying that clinging to form, such a wrong view can arise. Clinging to form, you can feel that there is this soul traveling from life to life. Clinging to form, you can feel, I am, this is me, this is my world. That type of a feeling comes. Then clinging to feeling, clinging to perception, clinging to volitional formations, clinging to consciousness, these type of wrong views can arise. That's the very idea Buddha is saying and explaining. So after that paragraph, after that initial explanation, then Buddha is asking certain questions from that gathering of monks. He is asking monks, the form, is it permanent or impermanent? Then the monks are answering, Bhante, it is impermanent. The form is subjected to change. The feeling, is it permanent or impermanent? Then they are answering, saying that feeling is impermanent. Feeling is subject to change. Then perception, volitional formations, is it permanent or impermanent? Then those monks are answering, saying, Bhante, it is impermanent. They are subjected to change. Then finally, consciousness. Monks Is consciousness permanent or impermanent? Now, even for us, the initial four, it is easier to say that they are impermanent. Even in our daily encounters, we experience this phenomena. We experience that these things are impermanent. Even the body, no matter how much you beautify it, the body ages. And after a while you start to feel that there is grey hair. Yes, so those type of changes we experience. Even the feeling, it changes. Let's say you got the most delicious meal in this world. You start eating it with so much greed. But no matter how delicious the meal is, no matter how much greed that's there, still you can't keep eating. At a certain point, you will get sick and tired of it. So you can see even that the feeling, the taste of those food, they change. You start with a lot of greed, it feels heavenly, but gradually it is changing and probably you get sick and tired towards the end of it. So that way, these things change. Perception changes. Volitional formations. You think about certain things, you perceive certain things, but gradually they are changing. Let's say your spouse, your partner, maybe when you started, you had a certain feeling about them, certain perception about them. And in your mind, you prefer keeping it constant. You want this person not to change. You want them to love you as they used to love. That type of a urge is there. That type of a resistance is there. But if a relationship to last longer, if a relationship to be successful, then both of you have to deal with each other's changing nature. Only if you are able to accept that change, the relationship will thrive. Otherwise, if you try to keep the same idea about that person, if you try to receive the same kind of affection from that person, if you don't like that other person to evolve, then the relationship is not gonna work. So even in our relationships, if we are successful in them, there is this understanding. There's this understanding of each other's changing nature. And the acceptance is there. Right? So, in a way you can feel that these changes we observe even in our daily encounters. So it is easier to say that the form is changing, the feeling is changing, the volitional formations, perception, they are changing. But we are somewhat reluctant to say that the consciousness is changing. Most of us, we prefer that the consciousness is constant. That type of experience we are having, the observer behind all this, that person is constant. That guy is there all the time. And you might recall the incidents maybe even decades ago. And you will say, I was the same person, same observer back then. My body was different. Probably I perceived things in a more naive way. I have matured a lot. But the observer, it was constant. That idea is there. So even for us, we can accept first four. But the last one, it is a bit tricky. And most of the other teachings, they say this consciousness part, it is constant, it is eternal. It travels from life to life. That type of a teaching or that type of a lesson is given. You can call it Atman, you can call it God, you can call it Brahman, whatever the name you wish, you can put. There's this very nice story about a certain person, a Sufi probably. His name was Manzoor. And in his practice, he experienced probably settling down of first 4 aggregates. More or less of settling down those 4. A deeper level of meditation. Let's say, so for few days, he has been absorbed into this deeper level of meditation, and that state of mind, he felt it more like God-like. So after his experience, he ran to streets of Baghdad shouting, Ana al-Haq. That means, I am the truth. So in his experience, he felt oneness with God. You settle down all the 4 aggregates and you are left with this consciousness, and that feels permanent. So it's natural for him to think that he experienced oneness with God. And he was screaming, shouting, Ana al-Haq, and running around in the streets of Baghdad. Unfortunately, the term Ana al-Haq, it was one of the 99 names for God. So others, they heard it. They thought that this person is negating the God. This person is creating this confusion by calling himself truth. So they caught him and they hanged him. So you can see, if there is this strong belief of self, if there is this strong belief of soul, then the problem continues. You can get into any types of wrong views. And it feels like this soul is traveling life to life. All the wrong views come from this. Even the yogis before Buddha, they were experiencing very refined levels of mind. But still, they didn't attain enlightenment because they were grasping this refined level of consciousness. If you grasp it, if you have the wrong view towards it, no matter how much you practice, you won't experience everlasting peace. Your peace is temporary because you have the wrong view. Even in, what's that sutta? It's in Digha Nikaya, Brahmajala Sutta. In that, Buddha is explaining 62 wrong views. All the 62 wrong views, they are coming to the practitioners only. So probably if you stay at home, then those views won't arise. You'll be watching TV, eating something, Saturday evening, it'll be a fun time. And no wrong views arise. So if you go through those 62 wrong views, in that particular teaching, all of them, they come with concentration. They come when you start meditating. So no matter how much you practice, as long as you have that wrong view, you won't find the everlasting peace. You will experience temporary relief. You will experience certain periods of peaceful nature. But it won't be permanent. That's the thing. So in this particular teaching, Buddha is going another step forward. He is saying even what you feel as consciousness or soul, that too is grasped into consciousness. There is no eternal consciousness. There is no everlasting consciousness. Instead, this consciousness appears and disappears. Let's take the breathing as an example. When initially you feel the solid breath, but when you keep on observing, you start to feel the breath breaking into smaller sensations. Some people, they would word it like, I observe many breaths in a single breath. So that type of experience comes. So you can see, initially it appeared as solid, but now you see the stream of consciousness in the breathing. Maybe like 1,000 smaller sensations come together and create a single breath. Initially it appeared as solid, but with continuous observation, you start to feel that it is not solid. It is combining of bits and pieces, and together we call it a single breath. So that way, we are experiencing that even the consciousness, it is impermanent. It is subject to change, appearing and disappearing rapidly. That process is so rapid, we don't see it as appearing and disappearing. Instead, we see a solid stream of consciousness. Unbroken stream of consciousness. That's our observation. But anyway, when you continue your meditation, when you keep practicing, you get to experience that even the consciousness, it is impermanent. It is subjected to change. That's the very idea. Then Buddha is asking another question. If these 5 aggregates, if they are subjected to change, isn't it suffering or dukkha? If something is changing, then that creates dukkha. That creates suffering. For example, let's say you have something valuable, maybe some idea, even a concept in your mind. You consider that concept of high value and you try to keep it constant. But with time, you are realizing that this particular idea is changing, evolving. And when that happens, you might start to feel friction towards it. Because it is impermanent, it creates suffering or dukkha in your life. And when we say dukkha, probably that use of word, it doesn't give the correct idea about the so-called dukkha. When we say suffering, it probably doesn't give the correct idea about the concept behind dukkha. Maybe it is more like unsatisfactoriness in this life. No matter how much you do, still there is this urge to fulfill something. No matter how much you work, you are not satisfied. For example, let's say your meals, You go to a buffet, you have a grand meal. There's so much you can eat. No matter the entire buffet is paid out, still you can't eat that much. The people at the restaurant, they know it. That's why they say anything you can eat. This is the price. Yes? So you eat a belly full, and at the end you will have to stop. Right? No matter how much you eat, within few hours, what will happen? Again, the hunger arises. Again, there's this need to fulfill. So every day, for how many times do we try to satisfy our hunger? Even by observing the nature of this hunger, you can experience what is explained as dukkha. I think it's better to use a word like unsatisfactoriness. No matter how much you acquire, still there's this lacking. And another great example would be during the festival periods, if you go to House of Fashion, right? You can see a whole line of husbands there. They have a separate section, seating arrangement for husbands. To even the House of Fashion people, the management, they understand the dukkha that is experienced by husbands. They go with their wife, daughters, let's say, and no matter how many items are there, these ladies won't be satisfied. They select something. At the end of that selection process, they decide that this is not proper. Again goes through that whole selection process. Right? Probably few hours wasted. So all the husbands seated there waiting for their wives, daughters to finish. When you see their facial expressions, you can really see dukkha in this life. Yes? So they are so anxious, looking at their phones, watching the time, thinking about other matters, looking around. When will this be over? So that's another good example of dukkha in this life. So when we say dukkha, don't try to get that negative idea, only suffering. No, that's not the case. Instead, this is more like, no matter how much you do, there is this lacking. That lacking is there. That's the very idea of dukkha. Then, if it is impermanent, if it is subjected to change, and if it is changing, it becomes suffering, then Buddha finally asking, because if this is impermanent, if this is suffering, anicca dukkha, is it worth it that you call this as self, atma or soul, let's say? If it is impermanent, if it is dukkha, then does it worth it that you call it as soul or self? That's the very question Buddha is asking at the end of this teaching. So most of us, even the other views, other teachings, they agree on first two. Anicca dukkha, they agree. This is impermanent, this is suffering. But the third one, the observer, still they feel that the observer is constant. That's the very idea. Now let's say you take your breath. You keep observing the breath. For a beginner, it is even hard to catch the breathing. But with repetitive practice, with few days of practice, you are able to catch the breathing easily, and you would say, I am able to observe maybe like 15-20 breath cycles. Then, if you get the proper advice, you will ask to observe the changing nature of this breath. First, we have to ask, is it changing or is it constant? Then when you observe in that manner, is it changing? Then only you will start to see that the breath is changing. More you see the change, more rapid it will become. Earlier it took maybe like 30 minutes for you to start noticing the change. But when you keep on practicing, when you start to see that change more and more, you realize as soon as I sit down, as soon as I start observing my breath, that breath is changing. So the breath is changing. What we observe is changing. But our understanding or our perception is that the observer is constant. But when the object of your observation, when it is changing, naturally the observer is also changing. That's the very teaching behind Buddha's practice. The observer can't be constant if the observation is changing. There won't be this eternal observer. Instead, the observer is changing similar to the observation. Now when you start the rapid change, when you start to see that, most people, they get these detoxing symptoms. They don't like what's happening. They try to fight it. They feel so much of friction due to that observation. You get detoxing symptoms. What is happening? Now there's this resistance because the observer is also changing. That's why there's so much resistance. When you see how rapidly the breath is changing, that won't be a pleasant experience. Some people, they become fearful. Some people, they think that they are dying. Some people open their eyes and see whether everything is okay. So that type of a period it is. You don't like to experience that even the observer is changing. If the object or your observation is changing, same applies for the observer. Even the observer is changing rapidly. That's the very idea. That's why in this Buddha's teaching, he is saying anicca, dukkha, anatma. There is no soul behind this. Instead, this is simply a stream of changing consciousness. That very experience we have to go through in our practices, and maybe for many months, many years, you have to endure it. And gradually, you let go of this strong grip towards the constant self. And you can see it, you can experience it in your daily life. You become more flexible to the changes in your life. Even your family members, they would think that this person is more flexible. Even you feel that my family members are like meditators now. They don't know meditation. They are not doing meditation, but you feel that even they are meditating with me. You feel even the world is meditating with me. Why? Where is the change? The change is within. When you change, when you become more flexible, you can simply see even the others are more flexible. Even the world is not so much of a bad place. Right? So these are signs that you are starting to understand that this anatma nature, that ability will be reflected in your daily encounters. You become more flexible, you feel less friction in this world. So that in order for you to experience such changes, you might have to go through few weeks, few months, even few years of meditation. And as soon as the change happened, you won't notice. Instead, it will be noticed at a later time. What happens is that there's this change, but you will only notice the change when some incident happens. You will reflect and you will realize, I used to react in this manner, but now, today I have reacted differently. That comparison will appear. The change, it has happened before, but now only you realize because of that incident. Right? So those things gradually developing, little by little, progressing in the practice, and the very nature that is reflected in these changes, you are understanding, or your mind is understanding the anatma nature in this. There is no real self in this. And time to time, certain difficult periods come. That is true. We'll have to deal with lust. We'll have to deal with our past trauma. We'll have to deal with certain other emotions, memories. So it's a long, painstaking process. That is true. But somehow you have to go through that process. And each and every one of us will have to go through that. In a way, I find it that it's beautiful that all of us, we have to go through this painstakingly long process. There are no shortcuts. If you think that there is a shortcut, it will be a little longer than the normal route. Right? So it's worth taking on this challenge, and it's worth going through this painstakingly long process. Even I remember I was sitting in this type of audience as a beginner. I didn't understand head and tail of the thing that was discussed. But you start with few minutes of sitting, you start with few minutes of walking, and gradually, step by step, you develop. And when you develop, you get to understand more and more. When you go through few months, few years of this journey, gradually things come into place. So, although it is long, although it is painstakingly difficult, this journey is beautiful. We all have to go through this journey. And time to time you have to deal with certain difficulties. Now, there's this very nice story about Milarepa. He, before becoming a monk, was a murderer. And at a certain milestone of his life, he decided this is not the path, and he started this spiritual journey. He was earnest, he was devoted, and he was practicing. And there's this story that says, one time, Milarepa, he entered his cave at a evening time. And inside his cave, there were many demons. So Milarepa decided, how can I deal with these demons? Now, although he used to be a murderer, although he used to be a bad person, now he is a monk. So he decided, I should probably preach to these demons. So he sat and he started his preaching. He was telling all about the practice. He was telling all about Buddha. He was telling how wholesome his lifestyle is. So that way he was preaching to these demons. But the demons, they didn't budge. They didn't move, they didn't disappear. So after a certain period of preaching, Milarepa got angry. After this many hours of preaching, still these demons, they won't budge. Then he started a whole new reaction. He was cursing at them. He was blaming them. I am a monk. I live this wholesome life. You shouldn't be here. This is no place for you to be here. So he was cursing, he was screaming, full of anger, trying to get rid of these demons. But still, no matter how much cursing, no matter how angry you get, no matter how loud you scream, the demons didn't budge. Then finally, Milarepa decided to give up. Simply, he gave up. If you are here, you be here. If you wish to be here, you be here. That type of acceptance was there in his behavior. As soon as he accepted those demons for themselves, suddenly all the demons, they disappeared. So that's the story about Milarepa. But this story reflects not about his dwelling place. Instead, this is a story that tells about Milarepa's mind. Even the practitioners, they see demons in their minds. They see lust, they see anger, they see certain past bad memories. So when they see them, they start preaching to those things. They say, I observe 8 precepts. I am in a temple. I am in a retreat. You shouldn't be here. We are preaching to those thoughts, memories. Will they budge? No. Then we get angry. We start hating these things. We start suppressing. We start reacting. Will they budge? No. Then finally, if you are lucky, if you accept those thoughts for who they are, then only the release will come. So in your meditation, all the past thoughts, memories, those things might come. Those things were the incidents that we grasped the most. The 5 aggregates, those were the incidents that we grasped the most. So naturally they are coming in our practice, meditation. even the history, even in the past, the combination of five aggregates, we were grasping, we were gripping tight to them. So as a result, there is this potential in them. So they come in your meditation. The only way to get relief is the acceptance. You let the thoughts be. You let the memories come. I won't say it is easy, but that's the proper way. You can try suppressing, you can try replacing them with good thoughts. All those options are valid. But those options, they are band-aids. They won't be a permanent solution. You can use them, you can get temporary relief, but sooner or later, you'll have to accept those very thoughts, those very memories, those very incidents. Once you accept only, their power will disappear. Their power over you, their control over you, that will disappear once you accept it only. So that's why this journey takes time. That's why this journey is somewhat difficult. But this is the path. This is the way. And let's say as practitioners, according to Buddha's teachings, even in this particular sutta that we have selected, now we say, probably now earlier we were having this belief in self, and now we are believing there is no self. Anatma, that's our belief. But you have to understand, even the self-belief, that was a view. Even the non-self-belief, that too is a view. Earlier, you had this view or grasping towards a self. Now you will get a grasping towards non-self. Although it shows like you have made progress, this second type of grasping, that too becomes an obstacle for your practice. This is a tricky game. Now all the time that we have used to talk about how this very thing is non-self. Now all of us, we are convinced that this is non-self. But now I am telling that you shouldn't be grasping towards that view. A tricky game, difficult. But when you start grasping towards non-self, attaining Nibbana, realizing that there is no self in this, that won't help you. That too will create another type of obstacle. We get rid of one type of obstacle and something else comes. Most of the meditators, they have this. If you are a seasoned meditator, probably you are striving towards Nibbana. Probably you are striving towards experiencing Anatma. Even in your meditation reports, every now and then we get to hear, I have experienced Anatma nature in this. I have experienced non-self in this. That supports my view of Anatma. But you have to understand, even the Nibbana, if you try to get there, then the practice will become slow, and that very getting to Nibbana will create a new barrier. That's the reality. So when Buddha selected the word Nibbana, that wasn't a familiar word in that society. The word Nibbana, that's a fresh word. No other teaching used this word for the ultimate realization. Only Buddha himself used this word. And the simple meaning is that putting out the fire. Nibbana. In that society, there were many positive words towards the ultimate reality. Liberation, moksha, freedom, those type of positive words were there. But Buddha didn't use those words. If you have a positive word, then naturally you get this urge, you get this liking to achieve it. You want to achieve moksha. You want to achieve liberation. You want to achieve freedom. So naturally a goal is created and you prefer going there. But Nibbana is more like a neutral word. You don't feel it is positive. You don't feel it's like a goal. Most of the Buddhists, they make it into a goal. But the meaning of the word, it doesn't mean positive or negative. Instead, it is more like a neutral word that Buddha has used. So you have to understand, if you have a belief in self, if you have a belief in non-self, both of these things are views, grasping to a view. The practitioners, they should settle down to neutrality about the self or non-self. Neutrality towards these things. Even the word Nibbana, that reflects the neutrality in it. That's the very idea. So more you practice, you shouldn't be striving towards something. You shouldn't be striving towards anatma. Instead, you should have neutrality towards these things. So with that we can take today's quote. It says, Evang passang peyalang naparang ittattayati pajanati. Seeing thus, he understands there is no more for this state of being. Seeing thus, that means seeing anicca, dukkha, anatma nature in his practice, he understands there is no more for this state of being. That's the final quote, final explanation in this particular sutta that we have selected. So you can see this person practices, develops his practice, and in that practice he understands or he experiences these things, and as a result he would have neutrality towards these things, towards the very state of existence. That person simply embraces the present moment. And that way of survival is there in him. He has let go of the past. He no longer expects the future. Instead, more or less settled down in the present moment. That's why seeing thus he understands there is no more for this state of being. In the present, there is this state of being, but there is no more to that. You don't have to analyze it in some way. You don't have to suppress it in some way. Instead, you are simply there witnessing that state of being. Now, let's say you go work, you go deal with other people. Maybe towards the end of a working day, if you don't have any valuable memories during that day, most of us, we will say that feels like a disaster. Either positive or negative, we should have certain memories about the day. This person praised me, this person did something bad to me, this pleasant experience was there, I was able to eat all the delicious food during the day. All such memories come because this grasping is there. But if you are fully present, if there is no grasping in your mind, or at least if there is less grasping in your mind, then you realize you live through the day. But towards the end day, there is nothing really to recall. You do a walking session for 1 hour. At the end of the walking session, there is nothing to report during that 1 hour. You sit for 1 hour. You don't feel like you have achieved anything. That type of experience, that will be a disaster to the Q&A session. Yes, all the empty reports. Nothing to say, Bhante. I did the full day of practice, nothing to say. It will be a disaster. But that's a great level of meditation. Initially, you feel like so much achievement in my practice. I did 1 hour of meditation, I have achieved so much. That is how you start. But when you keep on practicing, one day you realize, you do the walking, you are fully present. But at the end of that 1 hour, there is no real achievement. Or no real memory worth of recalling. You sit for 1 hour, but there is no real achievement, no progress made during that 1 hour. So that's the best type of meditation. You are there in the present moment. At the end of the day, you don't have anything worth recalling. You are there witnessing the walking process, but at the end of that walking, you don't have anything to report. Same goes for other activities and things that we do. So you can see now you have the neutrality towards this state of being. You are not trying to make it into a goal. You are not trying to achieve something in it. Instead, you are simply witnessing the present moment, and that's enough. And when the present moment is pleasurable, you experience pleasure. When the present moment is painful, you experience the pain. It's okay to be happy. It's okay to be sad. Most of us, we feel that it's okay to be happy, but we shouldn't experience sadness. Crying is bad, many people will say. Especially if you are a man, you shouldn't cry. What happens is that you hold your emotions, you somehow stay strong, and one day you break down. That happens. Present moment, if it is sad, then simply cry. Simply accept that emotion. If it is happy, you may laugh. That's okay. Most of the practitioners, they say, I shouldn't be feeling the taste of my food. I shouldn't feel that, I shouldn't enjoy that. That type of a reaction is there. I shouldn't be feeling happiness in my life. That's not the case. If the present moment is happy, simply welcome it, embrace it. If the present moment is sad, simply welcome it, embrace it. It's okay to feel happiness, it's okay to feel sadness. Both the positive, negative, these emotions, it's okay to feel them. That's the very idea. So you are there witnessing the present moment, but there is neutrality towards existence. There is neutrality towards this state of being. And you don't have certain goal in your mind, trying to achieve certain thing. That's not there. Buddha's explanation about Nibbana. Somebody comes and asks a question from Buddha. Bhante, what is enlightenment? Then Buddha answers, end of suffering. So he is giving a negative definition. He is not telling what's there. Instead, he is saying what's not there. End of suffering. A negative definition is given. Then again that person asks, when there is no suffering, what is there? Then Buddha is silent on that second question. His silence reflects that we should be experiencing it ourselves. If you give a positive definition, then what happens is that your very mind will make it into a goal. So Buddha is giving a negative definition. He is saying end of suffering. He is saying what won't be there when you attain Nibbana. But when you ask him, what is there when we attain Nibbana? Buddha is silent on that question. So that very expression explains the reality behind this. You yourself will have to go through the practice, and you yourself will have to experience. And when you experience, you become a mute. Nothing to say. I hope this particular sutta was useful, and I hope it will help you to progress in your practice. Thank you for listening.